I remember when I was 13 years old, I made a promise to myself that if I had kids, and I do have my 2 children, that I never wanted my children, or I never wanted to struggle or be in that situation. So for me, my passion, my why was my kids, my passion, my love, not being in that situation and always wanting to help the underdog. I was lucky enough to be able to break the cycle, and I want to teach other people how they can keep on breaking the cycle and believing in themselves. And if you get told, no, you can't do it, don't listen to that.
Welcome to The Glass Ceiling, the podcast where business leaders share their stories, struggles and triumphs.
There is a lot in that. There's a lot of learning.
We sort of had different views on how the business should be ran.
The next 10 years looks like for South Australia.
Startup's the easiest. I'm your host, Marissa Hankinson from Wavebreaker, and I'm passionate about amplifying their voices. Join me as we explore the highs and lows of innovation, entrepreneurship and leadership. From founders to CEOs, our guests will share their insights, experiences and advice on how to succeed and make a lasting impact. Get ready for inspiring conversations and valuable lessons. Let's shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time.
Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Look no further than Next Workspace. Located on level 15, 45 Pirie Street, our incredible facilities offer everything you need to thrive, from comfortable workspaces to cutting-edge technology and amenities. Plus, our collaborative community will help you connect with like-minded professionals, share ideas and learn from each other's experiences. With flexible workspaces, meeting rooms and event spaces, you'll have everything you need to grow your business. And with our supportive community, you'll never be far from inspiration, motivation or a helping hand. At Next Workspace, we're more than just an office, we're a community for innovation and creativity. Join us today and watch your business soar. Next Workspace, empowering your success. Visit us at www.nextworkspace.au.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Glass Ceiling podcast. Can I ask you to tell me who you are and what is your business?
Who am I? I am founder of Australian Native Food Co. and also the managing director. So we manufacture food, body and aroma products, all using native Australian ingredients. And then we also have another couple of businesses called the Little Red Door and Winston's, which are private function and event spaces.
Fantastic. Now, you originally started out in hospitality.
Correct.
Okay, so tell me just a bit about your hospitality career and then we'll go into the whole starting of Australian Native.
Yeah, definitely. So my hospitality career started when I was about 16, 17 years old.
You're allowed to say that, you would have been underage.
I was maybe underage. Very good reason though. And so I was working for various different locations around Adelaide and absolutely loved working in the industry. And I remember at that stage I was working for a large hotel group and I wanted a bit of a pay rise. I was also into property investing at a young age as well, and I needed a pay rise to be able to buy my next property and they wouldn't give me one. And so, I know, I was just like, I just need $5,000. It wasn't much, and you know, it was 20 odd years ago. And I was like, come on, you know, work towards getting this pay rise. They wouldn't give it to me. And one day I sort of cracked it in a nicest possible way. And I said, if you don't give me a pay rise, I'm going to go buy my own business and I'm going to take all your staff. And they said, you don't have the guts and you don't have the money and you wouldn't know how to. And at that point, there was a pinnacle moment that I was like, So I went home, saw my then boyfriend of 3 weeks. And I was like, well, I'm going to buy a business. Do you want to buy it with me or not? And he was like, yeah, why not? So I moved in, started looking for a business. Within a couple of months, we finally found the business that we wanted down on Henley Square. Yeah. Put in an offer. A couple of months later, we owned it. And that was the beginning of my journey. So I was 23 when I brought my first cafe called Zoot's Kitchen Bar.
I was literally going to ask how old you were.
Yeah, 23 years old. So Zoot's Kitchen Bar down on Henley Square.
That's still there, isn't it?
It's now called Moblo.
Oh, okay.
So it's changed owners and everything. But we had it for 10 years. And it was very successful.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was the beginning.
That's the beginning. So are you still in investment property too?
So I am currently out of investment sort of properties, in and out of it.
Yep.
I've been investing more in business and business property that can then derive me an income for a supply chain to my businesses. So,
you're being strategic with what you're buying.
Yes,
not just the residential.
That's correct.
So you were in hospitality, had the cafe. I'm going to ask a question. How many businesses have you had over the years?
Over the years, so I've had Zoot's Kitchen Bar. I've had a training and consulting company. I've had a candle making business, which I still do have. Mm-hmm. I've got the Little Red Door, Winston's, and Australian Native Food Co.
Okay, so that's quite a few.
Just a few.
So I want to go back to the training and consultancy, because this is where Australian Native Food Company sort of came about. So tell me what you were doing, and then how it sort of, because I think it organically grew.
It did indeed, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So going back to the training and consulting, so whilst I owned Zoot's Kitchen Bar, back then I was always one of the sort of people that I couldn't sit still, and I went and wanted to get my diploma in hospitality. And I remember sitting there in the class, and I just came back from managing a hotel up in Whyalla, and I may have been a bit tired and, working long and late nights. And I was sitting in the class, and I was in the front seat, and I remember it so vividly. And I had a trainer at the front of the class, and he was talking about acquisitions, and he was talking about all of this different stuff. And I was like, "You've got no idea what you're talking about." And I accidentally said it out loud. And he went, "Oh, so you know everything, do you?" And I said, "Oh, actually, I've just come back from managing a hotel, and what you're talking about is not correct," and all of that sort of stuff. And he's like, "Well, if you think you can teach a better class, why don't you get up here and do it, or go get yourself a job doing it?" So I did.
I think I'm sensing a little bit of a theme of, don't challenge Rebecca, because Rebecca's going to go and do it.
Yeah. So I went out, got my trainer's certifications, started applying for jobs as trainers, got told I was way too young. And I was like, finally found someone that would take me on, and started training within the industry. So and
this is hospitality.
Hospitality. And so then as I went through, I started teaching hospitality, retail, business management, and security, all up to diploma level. So when I sold Zoot, I was like, what am I going to do? So I went back to my grassroots of training, and I started training. I was running about 110 trainees. So I used to do my whole business development, the training plans, right through to the delivering of the courses. My main businesses were in the regional areas. So I'd go right out to Port Lincoln, Ceduna, Streaky Bay, do my trips coming back and forward, and really cemented myself in the training industry. And from there, one day I was actually teaching at one of the venues I now own called Winston. And I remember standing on the balcony, and I was teaching responsible service of alcohol, and someone came up to me and he was like, "Downstairs it's just come available. We should buy it." And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" They're doing it. And I was like, rookie mistake. I was like, I'm never going back into hospitality again, never doing this, never doing that. Next thing you know, we put all of our money into the business, and we got the keys because, we were just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's own a nightclub in Hindley Street. And went down there, and it ended up costing us 3 times the amount of what we thought. There was so many issues. We had a lot of licensing issues going into it with previous people that were there and tenants. So we finally got over that, opened our business 1 year later after we finished building a whole new shell. And then there was myself and 3 guys. We sort of had different views on how the business should be ran. So at that stage, I had to make a decision on what I should do with my life and where I should go. I had a property down at Henley Beach. I also, around that sort of time, had a bit of a car accident, wasn't as mobile as I could have been. And I was just like, do I keep on holding on to a property down at Henley Beach that is now worth a mint, or do I invest in myself? And I didn't want to go work for someone else. I didn't want to have to go on that grind. I knew I had the ability to do what I had done at Zoots already again. So I ended up selling my house, investing all my money on me, brought out all my partners, and brought my business. So
that's Little Red Door in Winston's?
That's the Little Red Door.
Yep.
And then a year later, I took over Winston's as well. So,
so did you still have the training business at this point?
I still had the training business at this point. So, and I was like, I've just got to take a gamble on myself. And so around that time, I started working within the training industry, but working with the flow kids. And so the flow kids are the kids that don't fit into mainstream school, learning difficulties. They're the ones that everyone looks over and doesn't want to, or doesn't have the time or ability or the patience.
Or they just don't fit the skill model and they're overlooked.
And those are the ones I wanted.
Okay.
So I started running a whole heap of training programs where I would work with all the different schools. They would bring the students to me in my venue.
Yep.
And then I would teach them how to actually work hospitality in a live venue. So we used to cook, we used to clean, we used to teach them how to pour the drinks, how to space up, how to do everything.
It's just that real life.
Yeah.
Because you can't learn that in a classroom sometimes, can you?
No, and you can go do a week or 2 weeks work experience and it's like, oh, well. Yeah. But when you're in there and, you know, we're setting tables and we're actually immersed in it, I started getting results from my students that were next level. We were getting jobs for our students. They were looking forward to coming. We had a high retention rate. And it changed so many of my students' lives. And even if they weren't looking at coming in there to do hospitality, the skills that they were learning,
they would have learned life skills,
transferable, And then one of my friends, Ben Willis, he rang me one day and he's like, "Oi, Paris," that's what he used to call me. And he's like, "How about running another course? We're looking at launching an Indigenous program, a pre-employment program. Do you want the contract?" And so we started going through and putting the parameters of what this looked like.
Yep.
And we ran our first class. So for me, I had 5 days with the students to bring them in, teach them 3 core subjects, teach them some new life skills, try and get a new mentality implanted in and get job outcomes. So the job outcomes normally came anywhere up to 2-3 months time. So, but for me, it was about how can I get the students engaged. So I remember we had the first class and the students walked in and I remember sitting there just going, "What have I done, Rebecca? What have you done?" And
it's a challenge.
It was a challenge. There was 13 students, all aged from 16 to 60 years old.
Oh, wow. It was
a huge challenge. Yeah, very. And I remember.
I just assumed it was young.
Yeah, no, not at all. So, and so they all walked in and I just sat there and I was like, well, what do you do? So we went through and we started it, and a couple of weeks prior to that, I'd done a catering gig with Daniel Motlop at Tandanya, and because I was heavily immersed in the Indigenous area and sectors from previous training I'd done as well. And I said, you know those green ants that we had and the bush apples? I said, I need you to bring me some. I need to make some jam. So he ended up bringing me some, and I said to the students, come on, let's get in the kitchen, let's cook, because if it's one thing I know how to do is cook.
Yeah.
And we started making jam. And whilst we were talking and making jam and cutting, and then we were making damper, all of my students' barriers just dropped.
Yeah.
And then I could actually start to talk to them and train them on another level without them actually realising I was training them and getting them over the competencies that they needed. And then we'd sit down, have a chat, eat together, and we just became like a little family. And it was only 5 days, but it was 5 intense days, had the highest retention rates, highest graduation rates, had job outcomes, like it was crazy. We ended up running that course 6 more times. Students from each course kept on coming back and redoing the course, and just as helpers and wanting to come in and help and be a support person. I had some of my students.
That would have been massive though within that community. That would have been massive to have their peers and that support.
It was beautiful. But then I also had their kids coming in. And then I had their kids coming in. I've still got some of their kids still working for me within the industry. working for Australian Native Food Co. And we were sitting there and we were making the jams and talking, and once again, the challenge thing. And I said, oh, imagine if one day we could get these and, you know, sell them at the Royal Show. And they're like, you'll never get into the Royal Show, Rebecca. You don't even have a name. I was like, all right. So I made a phone call. And because I've been at the Royal Show for many years as a face painter,
yeah,
I forgot to mention that one. So they ended up, put us straight in, got myself a stand, and I was like, well, we get a name, we had to get the labelling, we had to get everything.
And this was all for the jams?
Just for the jams. I only had literally 2 jams. I had a relish, I had a pesto, and I had a dukkha. And we went to the show. And I got it all set up. I had all my students come and work with us. Everything was all paid. It was work experience. It was like, and I remember just sitting there and I was listening to the customers and like, have you used this? Have you done this? Have you thought about this? And I just started seeing the commercial side to it. So I was like, all right. And then every day we were selling out a product that I was having to go back at night and cook.
Oh my gosh.
And then bring it back in the next morning. It was absolute mental. And I was like, wow, okay, so there's
something.
There's something there. So I went away, went back to the drawing board, kept on doing my training, and then we got offered a site at the Central Markets, and it was part of Renew SA. So yeah. I remember walking into the site.
Can I just ask, what's the time frame of this? Because I need to sort of...
Time frame? So Royal Show was in September.
What year?
2019.
Okay.
So it was training 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
So the course, all the ones working within the Indigenous sector started in 2019 at the beginning of the year. So it was like 9 months. And then we finished the Royal Show. We went into our shop at the Central Markets in January 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, no joke, right? And went in there and walked in there and I was like, I've got 5 products and I've got a shop to fill.
Okay. So, what kind of space was it in Central? Whereabout were you in Central Merchant? Oh, okay.
Huge shop, like be bigger than this room. So be, I don't know, maybe 20 metres by 8 metres.
Yeah, 5 products.
5 products.
It doesn't sound a lot, to be honest, Rebecca.
So I walked in there and started making product. Started listening to what customers wanted.
So, okay, so you had the jams, the dukkha, the relish.
Yep.
And then what came next?
Next came the candles, because I knew how to make candles.
Yeah.
Next came the reed diffusers, and then made a couple of more jams.
Yep.
And then I started bringing in teas and herbs and everything, and just started changing everything and implementing more products as I could. So, yeah, so it was sort of like how can you say, when a business goes like that?
Yep.
Mine went like that. And it was like, all right, we're in for a ride. We've committed this far. Why not? I'm all in. So...
You're all in again.
Yeah. And then Courtney from Westfield, Marion, rang me one day and she's like, so I've been watching your brand, seeing what you're doing. Are you interested in a shop at Westfield? I was like, why not? Let's have a chat. So I went down there and had a chat, fell in love with the store. And I was like, okay. So ended up signing.
So at this point, though, you must have had, with the volume of products, you must have had like a manufacturing, like where we still doing that in the venues at Winston and Little Red Door? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Is that including like the bottle and the labeling?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So every day we'd be down there cooking. On a Friday night when we'd have the bar and club open, we'd be packing everything up, stacking it in the kitchen or in the offices. My staff hated me. And then we'd run the bar, and then straight away the next day everything would come back out, and then we'd start.
Well, it was a private function, so
yeah,
it's not like it's open to the public, kind of thing. So yeah, I'm feeling, even though I know it's the end of the day that I'm doing this interview, but I'm actually feeling just exhausted listening.
Yeah,
but so How many have you got working for you at this point?
At this point now, there's about 6 staff.
Okay.
There's only 6 of us. So
you do a lot of output for 6 staff.
We do. So we did have, going back a little bit more, about a year ago, we had quite a lot of more staff, but I decided to pivot the business and change the business coming out of COVID, looking at what the market segments are asking us for, looking at where the income stream was coming for, doing a full analysis of the market. I realised that us being in Westfield Marion, and we'd been there for 4 years, was now coming to the end of its lifespan. Yeah. And so we just finished up there in May this year, and we've changed the whole business model of what we were doing to the new re-energised, the new way of looking at the native foods, going into more wholesale, going direct to the customers, having all of our stockists around Australia.
So rather than direct retail, you're doing that more distribution channels and things like that.
And then online's a huge space for us as well, and corporate gifting.
So one of the things that I do know is that the way you operate your supply chain, about giving back. Yes. Can you expand on that? Because that is something that you haven't spoken about, but I can definitely know is truly in your heart. So can you just expand a little bit on that?
Yep. My whole core of my business is my passion and my why. And so with any business that I do, I always have to have a why. I need to have a passion. I always need to have that fire in my belly for it. And going back years ago when I first started my training, one of the spaces I loved working in was working with the Flow Kids, but then working in the Indigenous community. So I used to travel quite a bit to Darwin, teach a lot of programs out there. I used to go to Port Augusta, Whyalla, run a whole heap of pre-employment programs. So when I got offered the contracts working within that sector, it was just a natural progression. And one of the things that I found is fell in love with the culture, fell in love with the people, I fell in love with the rawness. And so when I started Australian Native Food Co., because it was on the back of all my employment programs, I wanted to keep on giving back, and I wanted to stay true to my passion and my why and helping. So I started sourcing all of my products. I would go direct to the farmers and communities and growers. So I didn't like going to the big consortiums and buying at a really elevated rate that I know they
it only gets so much goes down to the farmer.
And that they were the farmers weren't getting the money that they were getting asked for. The whole industry was having a bit of a flip. Everyone's trying to overcharging products over here or not support correctly. So I made sure I went straight to the farmers. Whatever they wanted is what they got. I then created a really good supply chain for myself because they always knew that they were going to get the money they asked for, and that there was no arguments. This is what you want. This is what we need. They would actually go out and source me different products as well. And I still continue that whole philosophy of my why, and I still do the same thing. So one of the things we have done though is we've invested in a farm as well where a lot of our products come from, so that we can keep on giving back in other ways, employing on the farm.
Is this in Queensland?
It is in Queensland, yeah. So, and learning about horticulture, but then being able to donate more back to charities, working with a lot of different organisations as well, including the Adelaide Zoo, so that where we do have our profits in different areas, or, you know, sponsoring birds or helping communities, or, you know, just the employment programs. I've got a lot of my staff that I support in other ways as well, just so that I can make sure that everything I do is still my heart. It's got to come from my heart, otherwise it's never going to work. So
you talked about your why and your passion. Where does that come from? Who's been an influence in your life about where that why and passion comes from?
It's not an influence. It's been more growing up as a young lady. We lived in housing trusts. My mum couldn't afford to buy us anything. You know, for me to get new sneakers was like a struggle. It was hand-me-downs. it wasn't, how can I say this in the nicest way? It wasn't the best environment. And I remember when I was 13 years old, I made a promise to myself that if I had kids, and I do have my 2 children, that I never wanted my children, or I never wanted to struggle or be in that situation. So for me, my passion, my why was my kids, my passion, my love, not being in that situation, and always wanting to help the underdog, and always wanting to help the people that don't get the fair chance, like the flow kids or the Indigenous sector, and to give back and to help any which way I can to make their lives better, because I was lucky enough to be able to break the cycle. And I want to teach other people how they can keep on breaking the cycle and believing in themselves. And if you get told, no, you can't do it, don't listen to that. Like, just you do what you want to do.
And I think it's interesting that you've just said that, because you risked everything. Like like you've just mentioned that, and then you go on, no, I did that. I went all in. Which is it's admirable to have that belief system that you're going to make it work. Sometimes, you can turn around and say, I come from the UK and stuff like that, and well, I can't go back to the UK, so I've got to make it work. Is there an element of that in it?
Like, I'm not going to ever die not knowing if I could succeed. And like, one of my biggest sayings I say to people, what's the worst thing that could happen? You win. All right. And it sounds really weird saying it like that, but what's the worst thing that can happen? You win. What happens? Like, if you win, like, you've just done it. But what happens if it doesn't work? You lose a bit of time, maybe some money. Who cares?
Yeah, you make it back.
Do you know what I mean? It's just time and money. But have you enjoyed the journey? Have you learned all of this stuff? But what happens if you actually win? What happens if you succeed? Like, why not just take a gamble on yourself? So many people gamble on other people and put everything into them. Why don't put it into yourself? Trust in your own self.
Capability.
Yeah. And, I always got told from a young age, you're never going to amount to just all the normal, you're never going to this, you're this and that. And I was like, oh, God. And for me, all I wanted to do was prove every single person that told me I would never succeed that, you know what, I could succeed, and I can do even more on top of that. And it sort of became not a disease, it became like something that is so built within me.
It's just part of you.
Yeah, that now I don't know how to sometimes say no, which I've been learning a bit more, but I've had to slow down. But as you know, I'm slowing down to speed up in other areas, but I'm always looking for different ways to change my businesses, to pivot them, to make them, go to that next level. But at the same time, still having all my ethos behind me and still following everything that I love and do, and taking every single person with me that's been there along the way on the journey with me.
So it's interesting that you talked about pivoting. So, and obviously you've just pivoted the business by shutting down Westfield Marion. What did you look at that made that decision? When you did that analysis, I think sometimes, like, do you know your numbers, like, or, what is it? Because sometimes we had someone on before who said they often can bury their heads in the sand and all that kind of stuff. So are you on top of that? So
I'm on top of it, but I choose to ignore it sometimes.
Okay. That wasn't what I was expecting you to say.
No, you weren't, not at all. So I am on top of my figures, but for me holding on to Westfield Marion, which I held on maybe a year and a half too long, was about keeping some of my Indigenous staff employed.
Right.
And having the heart connection to my why.
Yeah.
And so I delayed what I needed to do, which cost me a little bit, but at the same time also helped me in other areas, because
that probably feels right in your heart.
It was. I had to do it when I needed to do it, not when the figures told me to do it. And even though I could see that the figures were telling me to do it, I still tried to create what I needed to, and I needed to be safe and secure, and I needed to make sure that my staff that were working there were safe and secure at the same time before I changed everything, before bringing them into the next venture.
I was going to say, so they're still employed with you?
They all are still employed with me, but all on different areas.
And that's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I needed to do it when it was right for me, not when I was.
Figures said it.
Yeah. And so, and then that comes from the heart side of me where, you know, I don't always listen to my figures. Sometimes, you know, I need to do what I need to do because I need to make sure I'm doing it right.
Yeah. And that's your ethos.
Yeah, it is. It's
and staying true.
Yeah. So, but I do know my figures. I work quite extensively within all my businesses, and I work quite closely with all my staff. So, you know, I love to be in there cooking and to doing stuff and annoying them all so that they want me to go.
Annoying them all. It's one of those things that I wouldn't ask somebody to do if I wouldn't do it myself.
Yeah. So, and but you know what? I still love that connection with my staff, and I don't think I'll ever lose it. I'm just restructuring all my businesses so I can step away into other roles and I can manage it in a completely different way to allow me to expand and grow. So I'm in that next stage where I'm, you know, letting go, which has always been one of my hardest things because I'm a control freak.
Okay.
But I'm learning to put new things into place, new systems, and I'm stepping away more and more every single day to allow for growth.
So you're talking about your growth stage now and going to the next level. Do you have anybody that's like, have you got into more learning? Have you got into with a business? Like, how are you doing that? Is that just coming from you as a driver, or are you pulling on other people to assist you with that?
No, I'm pulling in other people. So I've got my managers at my 2 locations. I've got a really amazing mentor as well. So I've had boards and all of that sort of stuff previously, but I've got a mentor right now that is understanding and guiding me and giving me the tools to be able to be very analytic in the way that I'm thinking and putting new strategies into place to help me grow in a safe environment, but at the same time by nurturing and allowing my staff to grow and bringing everyone up at the same time, but on another level. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I've been taken on a beautiful journey and wanting me and helping me just see things differently with a new set of eyes that, it's been there the whole time. I just needed to get rid of some of the cloudiness.
Yeah.
And through the business growth and everything that I'm like working towards, you know, now everything's just clear.
Great.
And there's clarity.
Good.
Yeah.
So if you had to recommend anything to any of our listeners who may be in business, do you have any books, podcasts, people? Is there anything that you go, you need to, this has been part, or is it just everything?
This is really, so I don't listen to many podcasts.
No, you don't have to.
I don't read. I listen to a lot of different frequencies and meditation sounds and everything that bring my vibration levels to different areas so that I can actually function on a clear level. Yeah. So I use a lot of frequency meditation.
Okay, I'm intrigued with this one.
Yeah. So so that just puts my mindset. I'm not one to sit there and watch TV or listening to the radio because I don't like noise.
No.
I'm someone that just likes to just be in my space, and once I'm in my space, I'm creative.
Yeah.
And once I'm in that mindset, I can create. And for me, it's just about following what you need.
And you capture that?
Yeah.
So how do you capture that? Do you journal, or how do you capture it? Do you just, it's there and the idea comes and you just
there. Yeah.
Implement.
Implement. And sometimes I'll do like a little bit of writing, nothing too major, but for me it's getting in a kitchen or cooking or creating a new product or seeing something that needs to get changed, and I just go do it.
Yeah.
And instead of procrastinating and thinking, oh, I should do that, or I'm going to write about the whole thing of what it should look like, I just go do it.
You're quite intuitive then.
Yeah, very. And for me, it's about living in that moment instead of planning for something,
that might never happen.
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm just like, I'm either going to do it, and what's the worst thing that can happen? It works. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, it's like, all right, put it aside, next one.
Yeah.
And so for me, I am in my head a lot, but with that, that's where I create. And I'm always manifesting. I'm into, I'm into the very spiritual side, and especially like working with the native products, working on farms, doing a lot of the harvesting and everything. There's some kind of spirituality that you just connect with it on a completely different level. And when I'm in my head too much, I'll go out to the farm and I'll just walk through and I'll harvest and be out there with nature, and everything just
happens.
Yeah. And so I guess I'm probably a little bit different to a lot of
that's okay
people, because it's just, mine's all about my mind and clarity. As soon as I've got that clarity, or
what path to go on.
And sometimes if I'm having, a bit of darkness, or, I can't see something, I'll just get on a plane and I'll just go somewhere. And there's something about getting up as a female and just booking a flight and going all by yourself to understand you, which is quite empowering. And then once I do that and I've got my clarity, I can then go to that next level. So for me, it's about having the clarity and the clearness to be able to then create whatever I need to.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Rebecca.
That's all right.
Thoroughly enjoyed. I had to have a bit of a time wave. I was
I was all over the place.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But thank you so much.
That's all right.
And I personally use your products.
Thank you.
And big fan. So yes, keep doing what you're doing.
I will. Thank you.
And you will be successful.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Glass Ceiling. If you've liked what you heard, please subscribe, as we'd love to have you as part of our community. We're grateful to our guests for sharing their inspiring stories and insights with us, and to our sponsors in making this podcast possible. This podcast was brought to you by Wavebreaker. Join us next time as we shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time.